The day has finally arrived as I attempt to put my first object into low Earth orbit in order to satisfy the contract first artificial satellite. I'll be going over the build in detail, but given the relatively low-tech engines that I'll be using, this rocket only has about a 50-50 shot of completing its mission. In addition, Kenneth Taylor attempts to beat the crude altitude record by a further 10 kilometers, but will descending from such a lofty height make him regret that decision. Let's get started. This is the X-7 rocket plane, which you first saw last episode when Evelyn Wolf used it to reach an altitude of 100 kilometers, thus crossing the Kármán line. That spawned this X-plane suborbital contract, giving Kenneth here the opportunity to do one better. So the goal here is to reach 110 kilometers. We reached 100 kilometers last episode and descend. And I tested this and seemed to go okay on simulation. So we're going to be going for this again. It's pretty much the exact same flight plan as what you saw before. There is a crude altitude record of 120 kilometers that I also tried in simulation. That went less well. And again, it's about the descent. That's the issue. It's the descent that's the problem, much more than anything else. I'm going to put on RCS to help this plane along, and I'm going to very carefully watch my apoapsis. I do not want to go much above 110 kilometers. I'm also watching this controller, the pitch controller, and reducing throttle if it looks like it's starting to have some attitude control problem. Anyway, we just crossed 100 kilometers on our apogee, so I really want to watch that. Let's go down a little bit lower on the throttle. 107, 108, 109, 110. Cut. So 110.5. Good. We're going to lock this onto the surface and take the master switch off. And we're just locked here to this prograde vector as we ride this up. All right. And again, it's the getting to the 110, not the problem. Like I said, I actually got to 120 as well. The problem is the descent. As always, the problem is the descent. And on the descent from the 120, yeah, we blew it up. But we're going to try and do this without blowing up. And again, I'm going to use the exact same descent profile. Let's get that all entered in. 20 kilometers we're shooting for the altitude, and climb angle of 30 degrees seemed to work well. We are still locked to our waypoint, but this has been switched off, so that's not doing anything. Not going to turn this on until we cross our apogee and start coming on our way back down. Right now, just keeping it locked onto the surface prograde vector. Okay, we have crossed our 110 kilometers. We are now on our way down. We got to land anywhere, but again, there is a reputation bonus for landing on the runway, which is what we're going to go for, and there's our runway right there. There is a smidge of science to collect. That there is a smidge left of that high altitude science. Probably have it here. Yep, the 0.5 credits. That's all that was left for that. And probably we're going to get a little bit of crew reporting as well. Hasn't been doing that yet. We got to get ourselves over the forest and over the shores, though, to be quite honest, the over the shores part isn't that big a deal. Okay, we're going to turn off Smart ASS, and we're going to turn on this guy, Master Switch. So now we're back on this. This can go away. And now it's going to do its best to keep that prograde vector here above 30 degrees. So it's going to be a pretty steep descent, but I found that worked out pretty well. And then it's going to try and level off at 20 kilometers. And again, found that worked well on simulation, so we're going to stick with that. And now you can see here it's leveling off a bit, trying to keep that above 30 degrees. It has some minimal success in doing that usually, but that's okay. Big thing is slowing down. I experimented as well with flaps, but it has trouble with the when the drag really gets high, and the flaps, it has trouble with the attitude control. So I don't think the flaps are useful right now. And the RCS is likely getting to the point where it's not of much use. We're starting to get... Oh, there's our crew report science. And we're going to get... Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Something blew up. Something blew up there. I was worried that was going to be the cockpit. I'm not sure what blew up. We're still getting some scary heat bars. Yeah, this is right at the edge. Come on, dude. No more of this stuff until we get a better plane. I don't know what blew up there. That's kind of got me worried. Let's put this at 10 kilometers. There we go. Settling down. We have a drop angle of 15 degrees. Okay, we gotta get down more steeply. So let's put this at 15, and probably start thinking about slowing down here. But what exploded? I can't tell. Something definitely did, but I honestly don't see what did. What exploded there? Okay. Well, anyway, we're under some control here. We have an angle to the runway of 14 degrees, so I'm pitched down at 15 degrees. I'm actually we're subsonic, so I'm gonna cool off on the flaps a little bit. But I really need to figure out what exploded there. Small landing gear exploded due to overheating. Poop. Okay. Alright, so I'm glad I checked that. So we lost a landing gear. Okay. I pushed too many buttons though. There we go. Okay, let's flaps off. And let's we're gonna overshoot deliberately. We're gonna have to water ditch. It must be the forward landing gear. Oh, I'm so glad I checked that. So we're gonna deliberately overshoot here. And we're gonna go just off the Atlantic. Kenneth just had to beat Evelyn. He just couldn't let it go. Alright, so everybody wave as we go over the runway, which was our initial target, but no longer is. We're clearing the shore. That was the main idea. Okay, we're going to be leveling off pretty soon. Lots of flaps. Okay, and we're going to go on to standard fly-by-wire, and now it's on me. It's on me. So let's get really low. Let's turn a little bit so we don't go too far away. So we can stay within sight of shore here. Okay, let's level off. Level off. Flaps on. But we do have, hopefully, a working parachute. So we are going to try and slow down. Nope. Parachute. Parachute. Oh, shoot. Maybe it has something to do... Okay, parachute didn't work, but we did it anyway. Might have something to do with the... I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, we're down. We're down. Didn't get the 10% bonus, obviously, for landing on the runway, but the contract is still complete, so that's good. Let's recover. So that leaves only the X-Planes hypersonic contract left to finish off the X-Planes program. But here in the administration building, you can see that there isn't any rush. There's still about 4 years left in the program, with the bulk of my funding still ahead of me. Moreover, there is no program to replace that funding should I finish off the X-Planes program. There used to be an early satellites heavy program, but I guess that isn't available anymore now that I've picked up early satellites light. And the other programs you see require the completion of the early satellites program first. As we just saw though, I've reached the end of the capabilities of the X7. Not only that, but both my high altitude and supersonic jets have also pushed the available technology as far as they could. If I want more capable planes, I'm going to need better tech. And that has me eyeing high-speed flight. And that gives me all kinds of engine upgrades, as well as some new engines and better air intakes. We'll get that one started, but the priority still has to be better rockets, as the deadline for the early satellites program is coming up before the X-Planes program. So while I was here, I also started early avionics and probes, and then got them researching in what I hope was a sensible order. And while we're on the topic of researching better satellite tech, towards the end of last episode I unlocked satellite era electronics. So let's take a quick look at what that one gets me. So what we got is static solar panels. Sweet. And then we got this, a resizable satellite for communication contract payload. The solar panels in the part texture are sized to power the client's payload and won't produce any excess power for your rocket or command and control. Okay, so this is like a core. And then another one, navigation contract satellite bus, same idea. So these are satellite cores built for specific purposes. Then we got a tiny solar panel, and then we got a research efficiency upgrade. Nice. But as eager as I am to begin implementing this new technology, I haven't even gotten into orbit yet. But that is about to change thanks to a rocket that began its development more than a game year ago when I unlocked basic rocketry, providing me with the LR-43 and Stentor rocket engines. To see what they could do for me, I designed a two-stage rocket with the Stentor on the upper stage and the LR-43 on the bottom. I soon realized that the Stentor was not a gimbaled engine. I provided attitude control to the upper stage by adding some RCS blocks in the form of 4 69-111 N-class blocks, set to the two-way variant. Aiming to switch the propellant to nitrogen, I instead selected nitrous oxide, an upgrade which, unfortunately, I have yet to unlock. More on this later, but for now, suffice to know that this rocket didn't perform much better than my previous builds. But this just encouraged me to discover just what would it take to get into orbit with my current technology. This led me to putting 5 LR-43 engines on the first stage instead of 1, and although this got me a rocket capable of achieving orbit, I knew as I was building it that it was completely impractical. Not only is it more than 7 times the mass limit of my current launch complex, each of those 5 engines on the first stage have only a 75% chance of ignition at launch, making the chance of all 5 igniting less than 25%. As much fun as I was having, this clearly wouldn't do, so I put it aside while I worked on other things. That is, until I was closing in on unlocking satellite-era materials science, and I wanted to see what I could do with the much lighter balloon tanks that TechNode will soon give me. So I created a balloon tank with the shape set to smooth cone. I set the top to a diameter of 700mm and the bottom to 958mm, the same dimensions as on the conventional tank I'm replacing on the upper stage. I then increased the length until I got the same amount of burn time as I did with the old upper stage. That turned out to be a length of 10.3 meters. I'm being very specific with the dimensions because this, along with a near-Earth avionics package with the avionics prototype upgrade set to 10 tons with 100 kilojoules of electric charge aboard, turned out to be the final design for this upper stage. I then rebuilt the first stage using balloon tanks. I wanted to calm down on the number of engines, but I found I still required 2. This would make the chances of both engines igniting at launch a little over 50%, which is at least tolerable. I will be completely overhauling this stage soon enough, but I wanted to show you this rocket's first simulation because this is where I finally figured out how to use McJeb's ascent guidance properly. Previously, I had this on the classic ascent profile, but that is for stock KSP. What I need to do is switch to primer vector guidance, which says right here it's for real scale solar system and realism overhaul. This gives me a lot more options as to how to proceed, so I need to get it. Let's make this 175 for my target periapsis, and I want to have a target apoapsis of 175. So I'm going to go for 175 by 175. We're going to keep current inclination. Let's get into the options piece of it. Again, these engines cannot throttle down, so once I light it, reducing throttle is not an option, nor is restarting the engines. Keep the throttle over 100%. The throttle cannot be turned down nor be turned off, so McJeb needs to know the throttle, don't shut down the throttle if you get to apoapsis, just do it. And this is the one, support hot staging. Previously, I had used smart parts for timing staging events when hot staging, but McJeb can handle all that automatically. All you have to do is throw everything involved with that staging event into the same stage. Here that includes the interstage fairing, igniting the Stentnor engine, decoupling the interstage, and activating RCS. The order doesn't matter, McJeb will figure it out, and with that, when the fuel had run out of the upper stage, McJeb had inserted this into a 176 kilometer by 171 kilometer orbit, well above the required 150 kilometers. And although I figured I would continue to play with some more of the tanks that will be available when satellite era material science is completely researched, I figured this 70-ton, 36-meter tall rocket was likely in the ballpark when it comes to the necessary scale, so I decided to begin the process of upgrading this complex accordingly. The modifications will take 208 days. In the meantime, satellite era material science was researched, prompting me to take a look at this rocket once again. The tech node not only unlocks the balloon tanks you just saw me playing with, but also these Isogrid tanks, and I really wanted to wrap my head around the differences. Essentially, balloon tanks are the lightest but the most expensive tanks that I have unlocked to date. The Isogrid tanks are a little heavier, but a bit cheaper and quicker to integrate. To get the best of both, I decided to leave the upper stage balloon tank alone, but replace the lower stage with a booster built around an Isogrid tank. I also wanted to try one of the new modular tanks, and given the era I was in, I figured the Atlas modular tank Isogrid structure was an appropriate choice. You can adjust both the diameter and length of this tank, so I picked numbers that would give me the same amount of burn time as I had with the previous booster. Also cool is the ability to pick the shape of the nose and the engine mount, as well as having a number of textures at your disposal. Like the upper stage, once I arrived at the final dimensions, I'll let you know what they are, but before I went there, I decided to write a basic orbit KOS script. This took advantage of my previously made countdown function, after which it passes control over to McJeb, and then just waits until it has achieved an orbit, at which point the program shuts down. I also had KOS turn on the RCS as I was habitually forgetting to do so. I thought a new launch complex deserved a new launch platform. This one I built around the Launch Base 2 Mini, 4 general hold-down clamps Type 6 small, and 4 Illuminator Mark 1s to light up the rocket. Finally, I decided to increase the diameter of the Atlas tank to 3 meters, shortening the vertical scale to 0.624 to give me the 2 minutes of burn time I had previously from this stage. I did this partly to match the diameter of the real-world SM-65 Atlas rocket, which not only was the US's first intercontinental ballistic missile, but also formed the basis for the Atlas family of rockets, which maintained this diameter through to the Atlas III. I'm hoping this rocket will serve me in a similar way, and that setting the diameter to 3 meters now will save me tooling costs in the future. This unfortunately required the main stage avionics and interstage fairing to be sized up to 1.5 meters in diameter. A bit of a shame, as I had ripped both of these parts directly from my old V2 Veronique rocket. Oh well. Speaking of the main stage avionics, for any that may be building along, it is a near-Earth core with the avionics prototype upgrade. The controllable mass is set to 75 tons, and it carries 175 kilojoules of electric charge aboard. Anyway, this turned out to be the final version of this rocket. For the stat hounds out there, it has a height of 30 meters, a mass of 70.5 tons, and a total delta V of 9,356 meters per second. This is the one that will make its inaugural launch a little later in this video. During development, I posted images on YouTube and received more than one comment comparing this to the Atlas Able rocket, an ill-fated rocket designed to take Pioneer spacecrafts to the moon. I see the similarity, but there are a couple of notable differences. One is that the upper 2 stages of the Atlas Able were pushed by the Able AJ10-101A engine, followed by the Altair X248. I've yet to unlock any engines that are this good. My upper stage is being pushed by the Stentor, which in real life was used to propel a British cruise missile. Also, the Atlas Able used a stage-and-a-half system for its main engines. 3 engines were lit at launch, but 2 of them were dropped during ascent to lose weight. RP-1 provides a skirt so you can set this up if you want, but I figured having 3 engines instead of 2 only increases the chances of something going wrong. Speaking of which, I added a bit of code to my KOS countdown function to detect if one of the 2 engines failed, in which case it will scrub the launch without releasing the clamps, allowing for easy recovery and refit of the rocket. For those interested, all this code is available at my GitHub, linked in the description. As well, if you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to drop by my Discord, where I have a channel dedicated to KOS, also linked in the description. This left the road clear to the eventual completion of the launch complex when I can finally tool this rocket and begin its integration. The tooling went fine, but I did not have enough funds and credits built up to integrate all the new parts. It took a few more months to raise what I needed, at which time I thought I was all set, but the game had one tiny little hurdle left for me. This vessel contains prototype configs that have not been unlocked. Oh no. Oh, what did I do? What I did, of course, was use an engine config I had yet to unlock. Neither the nitrogen nor helium configs I had available provided enough thrust for attitude control, so I ended up using HTP as the propellant. This config is less efficient than the nitrous oxide I had before, requiring more propellant, which did knock down the DV a bit, but it'll have to do because with that, the integration process for this vessel could finally begin. I currently have 82 engineers, but this launch complex could employ a maximum of 260. So after transferring the engineers I had from the hangar to the Atlas complex, I began hiring. Unfortunately, at 152, I ran out of money. My surplus of 279 funds per day is still pretty solid. I can afford the salaries, I just can't afford the headhunting costs. It costs 3,000 funds to hire 10 applicants. So what began was a period of time warping until I had over this amount in the coffers, hiring another batch of 10 and repeating. RP-1 gives you the ability to set fun targets and then just warp to each target, which makes this process go pretty quickly. Along the way, I unlocked both satellite-era science and solid rocket engines, but I'll have to save looking at that tech for a future episode. Eventually, I ended up with 220 engineers working in the launch complex, not too far from the maximum, but all that is irrelevant now as integration and rollout are now complete. After 16 months, launch date has finally arrived. So I want to get into my target here and change these targets to 160 because it really just barely made it there in simulation mode. So we'll change those targets. We will engage that. Now I do want to remind people that these engines only have about a 75% chance of ignition. There's 2 of them, which means that all told, both of them going off is about a 50% chance, a little over 50% chance that both of those will ignite. The launch clamps shouldn't release if either of those engines fail. So all I can say is let's hope that that is the case. Otherwise, there's nothing left to do but to run the program and see what happens. Orbit. If it fails after that, then we'll just have to abort and blow it up. So we're going to see, first of all, is this going to be... Well, there we go. We crossed that hurdle. We are off. That is exciting. Okay, so far so good. Now what we need, again, the scariest part of all this is will both these engines successfully burn to the end? That's going to be a big deal. And I have no idea, by the way, what will McJeb do with the auto staging if only one of these engines fails? Will it stage? I don't know. It's something I should have tested, and I'm just thinking as well, will both these engines fail even if they just run out of... I don't think I ever tested that. Okay, I'm nervous. Yeah, you see what I'm getting? I don't think I ever tested what... Like, will they both flame out at the same time when they run out of fuel? This is my first time with a rocket that's had more than just a single engine going at a time. And how will McJeb handle that? I don't know the answer to that. Anyway, we are leveling off now. Actually, what I really should be paying attention to. One thing at a time. Let's put that there. But it's going to be staging any moment. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Major. Okay. No. Don't say it. Don't say it. Okay. We are under a good control here. Our apoapsis is at 150, which is more than the contract requirement. The target is 160. Oh my gosh. Okay, we are just about at our target apoapsis. It's going to exceed it, and then it's going to try and bring it down. That's just kind of what McJeb does. So you can see it's pitched pretty much at the horizon, just a smidge above it. We're just going to have to ride this out till it runs out of fuel and kind of hope for the best. Yes, we are over our target apoapsis. You can see it's slowly pitching down. It's maybe a smidge below the horizon now. And at some point, it'll start bringing this apoapsis back down. But of course, what we really need to do is pull up that periapsis. We're still a long way from an orbit here, folks. You can see now we're pitched well below the horizon. What's our apoapsis doing? Our apoapsis is starting to creep down. Again, just a quick reminder, this engine cannot be throttled, nor can it be reignited. So it's just going to burn until it runs out of fuel. And if our perigee is above 160 or 150 kilometers is what we need, then everything is golden. And if not, then, well, I guess we'll try this again. Once again, absolutely zero science on that. That's going to come next, but we are almost out of fuel, and oh my god, this just barely made it. 158 kilometers on the perigee when it ran out of fuel. Wow, I didn't realize it was going to be that close, but that doesn't matter. We did it. That is an orbit. All we got to do now is stable orbit, so there's nothing unstable about this. We are 100% above the atmosphere. We just do this for about another minute and a half. We're good. That program is done. We have no control. I can turn RCS off. That's actually the only kind of control I have, is the ability to turn RCS on or off. No means of added. It's just going to float up here. Eventually, I will probably just delete this thing, because my rationale is an orbit of 160 kilometers would be unstable. It would probably orbit for only a little while. The real-world Sputnik was up for about 3 months, though it was in a much higher orbit than this. I'll figure I'll give this a few weeks. I'm pretty pleased. I gotta be honest. I didn't expect to get this on the first launch. I expected some sort of failure to work its way into those engines. The failure rate chance was high. And so I was expecting, mostly on that first stage, I was expecting either to have to scrub the mission because one of those engines didn't ignite, which wouldn't have been a big deal. We would have just recovered the rocket and, rolled it back, tweaked it up. It would have only taken a week or so. But I was also very worried about one of those engines failing during the ascent. But no, that didn't happen. Okay, we got 5 seconds here. And boom, and that first artificial satellite contract is complete. We take a look at our messages here. We also got an uncrewed speed record of 7,000 meters per second. Excellent, and congratulations on placing Earth's first artificial satellite into orbit. 85 reputation and 50 new applicants. Oh, good. So I don't have to spend money to hire more applicants. That's excellent. Oh, I could definitely use that. And with that surprising success, I'm going to be drawing this episode to a close. I thank you for watching and hope to see you again next time.